The Great Deletion. We are told that the greatest tragedy in human history was an accident, a stray torch, a spreading fire, a lapse in judgment. For 2,000 years, we have mourned the loss of the Library of Alexandria as a localized disaster of the ancient world. But the archive reveals a more terrifying pattern. The library wasn't just burned, it was deleted. It was a systematic erasure of human memory, executed by a succession of powers who realized a fundamental truth. If you control what a people remember, you control what they are capable of becoming. The fire in Alexandria didn't just consume papyrus, it consumed the roadmap to our future. It was a psychological operation of forced ignorance that set humanity back 1,000 years. This wasn't negligence. This was calculated destruction. Each power that rose to dominance understood one critical axiom. A population without access to its own history is a population without agency. Without memory, there is no resistance. Without context, there is no rebellion. The library represented something far more dangerous than gold or territory. It represented the possibility of an alternative future. Tonight, we decode the Great Deletion. This is Mythic Code Official. To understand the loss, we must first understand the scale. Founded by Ptolemy I, a general of Alexander the Great, the library was a project of intellectual piracy. The Ptolemies didn't just buy books, they hunted them. Under a royal decree known as the Protocol of the Ships, every vessel that docked in the harbor of Alexandria was searched. Not for gold, not for spices, but for scrolls. The original manuscripts were seized, copied by a small army of scribes, and, in an act of supreme psychological dominance, the copies were returned to the owners, while the originals were locked in the archive. This was the psychology of possession. The Ptolemies understood that knowledge is the ultimate currency. By centralizing the world's information, they made Alexandria the cognitive capital of the planet. Imagine what was held behind those stone walls. The lost plays of Sophocles, the secret engineering of the pyramids, documents from the dawn of Sumerian civilization. Aristarchus of Samos had already calculated that the Earth revolved around the sun, a truth that would be suppressed for nearly 2,000 years. Eratosthenes had measured the circumference of the globe with remarkable accuracy. Hero of Alexandria was building steam-powered engines that prefigured the Industrial Revolution by centuries. The library contained medical texts that described surgical procedures we wouldn't rediscover until the modern era. We were on the verge of an intellectual awakening that would have fundamentally altered human civilization. But knowledge of this magnitude creates a profound psychological threat to those who rely on dogma and tradition to rule. Information is the ultimate disruptor. It is the one weapon that cannot be controlled by force alone. And for the rising powers of the Roman Empire and later the Christian Church, the Library of Alexandria represented something far more dangerous than a military rival. It represented the potential for independent thought. It was a fortress of dangerous ideas, guarded by the remnants of a dying intellectual tradition. The narrative of the fire is a convenient myth designed to hide a sequence of assassinations, not of people, but of ideas themselves. The first strike came in 48 BC. Julius Caesar, trapped in a harbor battle against the Egyptian forces, set fire to his own fleet to break the blockade. The flames spread uncontrollably through the docks where papyrus was stored. This was the collateral damage phase, destruction that could be written off as an accident, a tragic consequence of war. While some scrolls were lost in this initial conflagration, the archive survived largely intact. But the seed of destruction was planted. Power had learned a critical lesson. The library was vulnerable. Over the next 4 centuries, the library was battered by a series of intentional erasures, each more calculated than the last. The Emperor Aurelian sacked the city in 272 AD and ordered portions of the library burned to deny resources to the enemy. The Christian zealots under Theodosius I in the late 4th century, viewing pagan knowledge as heretical, systematically removed texts they deemed incompatible with Christian doctrine. And finally, the Muslim Caliphate, though often unfairly blamed for the library's complete destruction, administered the final blow to an institution already fragmented and stripped of its power. Each wave of destruction was driven by the same psychological motive: the monopoly on truth. When a new ideology takes hold, whether political, religious, or philosophical, the greatest threat to its survival is the evidence of what came before. This is the psychology of forced ignorance. By burning the scrolls, these rulers weren't just destroying paper. They were destroying the alternative narrative, the proof that other ways of thinking, other ways of organizing society, were once possible. They were ensuring that the only truth left standing was their own. Consider the case of Hypatia, the last great librarian and keeper of the archive's intellectual legacy. A mathematician, astronomer, and philosopher in a world that was rapidly descending into fundamentalism, she represented the final embodiment of Alexandria's golden age. Her murder in 415 AD by a Christian mob wasn't just a crime of passion, it was a symbolic execution of the archive itself. When she was dragged from her carriage, torn apart, and her remains scattered, the intellectual light of the ancient world was officially extinguished. Her death marked the moment when the physical destruction of the library was complete in the hearts and minds of those in power. This is the fear of the archive. Those who wish to control the present must first colonize the past. They must rewrite history to serve their narrative. By murdering the scholars and burning the scrolls, successive regimes created a vacuum of knowledge, a dark age where the common man was forced to rely entirely on the state, the church, or the ruling class for his understanding of the universe. Without access to competing ideas, without the ability to question, humanity entered a period of managed ignorance that would last for 1,000 years. But the Spartan and Trojan lessons taught us that the code never truly disappears. It only changes form. We live today in a digital Alexandria. We have more information at our fingertips than Ptolemy could have dreamed of. But our archive is more fragile than papyrus ever was. We are entering the era of the digital burn. In a world of centralized servers, cloud-based infrastructure, and algorithmic gatekeeping, the Great Deletion is easier than ever before. A line of code can rewrite history in milliseconds. An algorithm can bury a truth beneath layers of irrelevance. A 404 error is the modern equivalent of a Roman torch. We are once again being pushed into a state of information overload, where we have access to everything to read, but nothing to remember, nothing to integrate, nothing to act upon. The burning of the Library of Alexandria was the first great psychological hack of the human species. It proved a principle that would echo through the centuries. If you remove the foundation of a civilization's collective memory, the entire structure will collapse into a state of managed ignorance. Citizens become subjects. Questions become heresy. The past becomes whatever those in power say it was. What parts of your own history have been deleted? What scrolls have you allowed to be burned in the name of convenience, progress, or conformity? What alternative futures did you never even know were possible? The archive is always open. The code is waiting. Like and subscribe to Mythic Code Official, decode the world, or be decoded by it.